Okay, so today we're going to talk about dust collection in the shop. Now, from day one, I knew I wanted dust collection in my shop to every tool. I wanted a clean workspace. I wanted to protect my lungs, protect my kids, and I wanted to try to do everything I could to have a clean environment. Now, there was one problem. I knew that dust collection was going to be expensive. So I started doing a lot of research. I started comparing prices. I bought things from Amazon, Lowe's, Home Depot, and I bought it in pieces as I went because I really didn't know what I wanted. So that's what I'm hoping to help you with today. Now, I have used a lot of different things that maybe aren't as expensive as the nicer dust collections, but maybe you'll get something out of it. And I'm going to try to show you some things that you can do to be a little bit more affordable to get dust collection in your shop. But before we get started talking about all the tools and the things that I've done in here, let me show you a few of the components that we'll be working with, that I'll be talking about in case you're not real familiar with a lot of terminology. I'll show you what some of these things are, and then we'll get into looking at the tools and seeing how I did things, and I'll do some demos for you. So first, let's talk about the components. The first thing you'll hear me talk about is the Snaploc pipe, and that's what this is. Now, when you find Snaploc pipe, it'll come in a flat sheet, and you'll roll it up and you'll lock it in place. Now, I've got a previous shop talk video, I'll link it in the description, that goes over how to lock this and tape the seam and that kind of thing. The second thing are the 45, 90, they're adjustable. You can do it 45 degrees, you can do it 90 degrees. So you just kind of turn this to whatever angle. You can do a funky angle if you want to. You can do a 90, do a sweeping elbow, whatever the case is. And then you can tape over the seams with some aluminum duct tape. And that's what this stuff is. And it is very sticky. You tear off what you want, and then you just peel what looks like little construction paper or paper on the back of it. Just peel it off and put it where you want to. And I didn't really take the time to be real neat with this. This was a project that I wanted to function and work properly, more so than look pretty. So I taped all the seams that I could, try to prevent any leaks that I could, and that's just the way I did things. But these things will fit in right over the pipe. So if you've got an end like this, these things will fit right over the top. You can tape that seam after you figure out your angle and attach it to the wall, the ceiling, or whatever. But this is what we'll call a 90 or a 45. I probably won't mention much about these. So that's that. But this is the Snaploc pipe, and I paid about $1 a foot for this. So I got 50 feet, and I paid 50 bucks for all this pipe in my shop. I used 45 feet, and I've got a 20 by 20 shop. And the way I hung all of this to the ceiling is with some metal hanger. It just comes in a roll, and I just used drywall screws. Just word of caution, if you're not familiar with this stuff, please use safety glasses, because this stuff will sling back and that will cut your eye. I'm sure there's some people watching that's happened to. So from the Snaploc pipe, you've got your 45s, and then when you get down to the tools, now this is 5-inch, and all of my drops to my tools are 4-inch. So I had to have a reducer. I got this on Amazon, and this is Delta makes this actually, and this is a 5-inch to 4-inch, and that actually just fits over the Snaploc pipe. And your hose, your dust collection hose, the clear hose that I used, looks something like this, and it will fit right over the 4-inch section. And it's a pretty snug fit, but you still need a hose clamp. So the hose clamp that I use, are these types. Now I've got a couple of different types of hose clamps. I bought some that's got the little twist knob on it. The majority of the ones I bought are just a screw that you use your drill, whatever. And so you feed this onto hose, and then of course this goes on to here and cinch it down to where it does not come off. And that's how the hose connects to the reducer. Now at some point you're going to have a blast gate, and the only places that I have blast gates are into what I call the saddles. This is a 4-inch saddle, and these fit right over the 5-inch pipe. I'll go over that in just a second, but let me show you about the blast gate. These things will fit, these blast gates will fit right into here if you want to have a blast gate right off the branch. If you want to have it coming off the hose, these things fit right inside the hose. And that's the majority of how I did mine. I've either got mine in the hose or in the saddle. So these are 4-inch self-cleaning blast gates, and by self-cleaning, what that means is that the blast gate will come out past the actual port on both sides. So when you're using it, you will get dust inside this groove, and when you close it, when you're not using it, it will push the dust out. It will not get trapped in there, because over time, if you don't have a self-cleaning blast gate, then what happens is you get dust in there, and this gate won't close all the way, because the ones that aren't self-cleaning stop right here. And so if you've got debris, you may get a small gap, and you might cause an open in your system. So that's why I like these self-cleaning blast gates. There are a couple other designs out there. I know Jay has some on his. He did some to where he made his own, and the end is open, and it works the same way. So that's the blast gates. The other things are, I've got a couple of T's in certain areas, and T's are 90-degree turns. This is a Y. WYE is how they're listed in most places. This is made by PowerTech, and this is a 4-inch. I've got this in a couple of different places, like at my outfeed table below us. I've got three different drops, so I've got 2 of these in place, and those come in real handy. Now, also going to my table saw. My table saw has a 2 1/4, 2.5 inch dust port coming off the back of it, so I had to get some 2-inch dust hose, and so that's what this is. And I had some 2 1/4, 2.5 inch hose clamps to fit on that. And they also make the Ys that you have a 4-inch straight with a 2 1/4, 2.5 inch branch. And that's what's actually feeding my table saw. So one last thing I want to talk about is the saddle. Because when you start looking at a lot of Ys and connections for the dust collection, these things are expensive. They are, if you get these in sheet metal, they are expensive. And I didn't want to go that route. So I happened to run across these, and I thought, you know what, it's going to take a little bit more effort, but this is worth a shot. Now, this is a 4-inch, but this is flexible just a little bit. And the Snaplock, if you remember, the pipe is 5-inch. But if you will see that this will go right over the 5-inch pipe fairly easy. And the way I did mine, and so now you've got a drop coming off here going to your tools. What I did is I held this up here. You can put some tape around it to hold it in place. Take you a marker, draw where the opening is on the pipe through the saddle. So when you take this down, you've got a location marked. Drill you a hole with a metal bit, and then take you a jigsaw with a metal blade and cut that opening out. And then you can take this, put it back on there, tap a couple of sheet metal screws into the pipe and tape it off, and that's it. Now, some people will say, well, what if you want to move it? You know, what if you want to change your direction, or, you know, whatever. These Snaploc pipes you can undo, and you can rearrange those however you want. So, you know, try to just put 1 drop in each pipe section, which they are 5-foot sections. That's what the ones I've got are. And I've only got 1 hole in each of these pipes, so if I have to rearrange mine, I can take it out and move it around as I please. So keep that in mind. Okay, so that's some of the components. That's the majority of the components. If you see something else in the video and you have a question about it, please don't hesitate to contact me. What I will do, I will give a list of all the products, all the items that I purchased from Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's, and wherever else I may have purchased something. But I'll give a complete list, so any of you guys that want to try to tackle this in your own shop, which I highly suggest you do if you are spending any amount of time in your shop creating sawdust. But if you use the list, fine. If you don't, fine. If you want to pick a couple of things off of it, that's fine too. I just want to be able to provide this to make it easier for somebody else. I did a lot of legwork to try to, be able to afford to do this system in my shop, and I'm really glad I did. So that's enough talking about all the components. Let's get into the video. I will go into the drops, how I've got it configured, do some demo cuts, so you can see for yourself how well the system in my shop works and see if it's something that you want to try. All right, let's get started. Okay, so we're in the shop closet. I've got my dust collector back here in the corner. I've got my separator here. The dust collector that I'm using is a Harbor Freight unit. Now, I haven't done any modifications to it other than change out the filter that came with it. What I've got on it now is a Win environmental filter, and I highly recommend that. Let me tell you a little bit more about this separator. Okay, so this is the separator, and it's a 55-gallon plastic drum. For the lid, I use 3/4 inch plywood. I just cut it into a circle bigger than the diameter of this top, and I cut a groove all the way around the underside with a router so it would fit nice and snug on the top, and then the suction keeps it pulled down so there's no leakage anywhere. Now, for the in and out components, I bought those from Rockler, and this is what they're made for. They're made for this dust collection hose to fit over and use a hose clamp to keep them in place. So this is my Craftsman 13-inch lunchbox style planer. The dust hood that was made for this is no longer available. They don't make it anymore. So I made one out of plywood and MDF and just put a blast gate right here at the tool for convenience. And I've got the hose stored on the wall. I've got a 5-inch to 4-inch reducer taped off on one end, and the hose just sits on it. I'll show you what I'm talking about. But this thing works phenomenal. I don't have any chips or dust on the outfeed side. I do have some on the infeed side, but that's okay. It's just minimum. So this is a huge upgrade to this planer. I know it looks ugly, but it works great. Let me show you how I store the hose. Okay, so what you're looking at is the drop that goes to my planer. Now, I keep it in this orientation when it's not in use. This is a 5-inch to 4-inch reducer. I've got the 5-inch portion taped off to act like a cap so it doesn't create an open in the dust collection system. So it's nice and neat on the wall, ready to use at any given time. Now when I get ready to use it, all I gotta do is lift it off and hook it to the planer. So let me show you the demonstration on how well the dust collection works. Okay, so here at the lathe, if you follow me on Instagram, you have probably seen some progress pics of this that I have built around my lathe. The original design consisted of this box in the back, this side piece, and this divider that is removable. I can remove this and move it down depending on how long my workpiece is. This acts as a divider and also acts as somewhat of some airflow restriction, not a whole lot, but the main thing is just to act as a divider to block some of the chips flying around. I came back and added the plexiglass. I'm not really sold on this idea. I don't see where it's really doing a whole lot, but I added these supports on the ends for the plexiglass, and I mean, it's okay. I'm already wearing a face shield, so I don't really need this for my face protection. But to contain the chips from flying out, it does somewhat of an okay job. So I'll give it that much. The other thing with this lathe is I built a box below it, opened up the bench below there, and so it's an open air box. If you look real close, you can see the dust port here. And just like my downdraft, I've got some ramps on the side to kind of guide the chips and the dust down to the dust port. And you can see the dust hose here coming down. That is coming from a drop overhead. It goes down and hooks up to a dust port to the bottom of that box. Now there is a blast gate down here as well, and I can tell that it's open or closed just by looking at the port inside that open box there. So I can either let it run while I'm working or not, but it's easy to clean up because I can open the dust port when the dust collection's on and kind of rake those chips off into the port and clean it up that way. Of course, I still have the mess on the floor that I need to contend with, but that's to be expected. I don't think there's 100% solution for the lathe. You're looking at a floor sweep right here that I made in about 15 minutes out of plywood. All it is the dust hose comes down, connects with a blast gate. I've got a hole on the top of that plywood, and the blast gate literally just shoved in that hole. It does what it's supposed to do. It's about 5 feet from where my lathe is, so the mess that I make on the floor over here, I can just sweep it over here into the floor sweep and be done with it. So we're at the miter saw, and this is the 5-inch Snaploc pipe. This is the drop for the miter saw and the joiner. I've got the 4-inch saddle that fits over the pipe right here. And then also I've got the 4-inch self-cleaning blast gate here with the 4-inch clear dust collection hose attached to that. So the hose makes it down past the miter fence, and it lands right behind the saw blade of the miter saw. So when I'm making a cut, the hose is right here behind the blade, which it catches probably 85% of the dust that would otherwise be in the air or out here that I have to clean up later. So this does a really good job of taking in all that stuff. Now anything that makes it past this is okay with me. It just lands out here in the cavity behind the miter saw, and it settles. It's not floating around in the air or anything. I can clean that out later, and I'm fine with that. So this one hose really does all I need it to do here at the miter saw. So I'll make a few test cuts, let you take a look and see what you think. Okay, this is one of the easiest tools that I installed my dust collection on. I already had the pipe coming down from my miter saw, so I just extended that. I've got a 5-inch to 4-inch reducer with a blast gate and a hose going over to the bottom of the joiner. Now what you can't see is a dust hood that I ordered from Amazon that's got a 4-inch dust port on it. And the way I installed this is I just placed it right up under the blade and took this, and you can see it if you look, it's aluminum heating and cooling tape. I taped around it real good and made sure all the holes and the seams were sealed up tight. I'll go ahead and make a couple of test cuts and you can see for yourself how well it works. So I mentioned the joiner was one of the easiest tools that I installed my dust collection on. The easiest tool that I installed it on is the drill press. Basically all it is a hose coming down with a blast gate, and then more hose from that, which is this right here. I've got a rubber band holding it to the drill press itself. Now when I put this in, I left a lot more hose than I needed. So when I get done, I can take this off of this rubber band, extend it out, and suck up everything else that is on this table. Go ahead and watch this clip of me making some test cut with this Forstner bit and see what you think. Okay, so we're at the router now, and this is built into my outfeed table. This is a Jay Bates design. I'll link his video in the description. So if you'd like to build this or like more info, check that link in the description. The hose that hooks up to the box, the router is enclosed in a box and the port is right below the router. The hose is connected right there. I've also got a blast gate there right at the tool for convenience. Come up here and I'll show you how the fence works. Okay, so now we're looking at the top of the router table. And this is my fence. Now this insert is part of Jay's design. And the way this opening is, the smaller opening is for the router bit to be raised and lowered. This is where the router bit will pass through. The larger opening here is mainly for dust collection. So when you have it installed like this, and you have your fence here, this fence is designed to have a box on the back. And the bottom of that box is open. When you have the fence set up to make a cut, this opening is over the larger part of that insert. So when you're cutting the wood, the chips would travel past the router bit, through the opening in that box, and down through the large opening to the dust port. Okay, now we're at the downdraft. It's also in my outfeed table. When I built this tabletop, I had in mind for the downdraft and the router lift. So this is nothing more than a grid type tabletop. And I left space in the grid for this box that I built. And this is nothing more than a plywood box. The top of it is a piece of pegboard that I cut to size and left the opening like this. Now on the inside, I've got 2 ramps on each side to kind of guide the dust down into the dust port. So I just want to demonstrate how fast this is to hook up. A lot of people don't take extra measures to do a downdraft or to try to collect all the sanding, because it's, by the time you set it up, it's a lot of time invested. This is very easy to set up, and it takes just a second to be ready to go. Now once you have your dust collection hooked up to the box, you have your hose at the bottom with a blast gate. I've got mine right below the box for convenience. So I've got all that set up. Now when it's time to work, this is how long it takes me. And I'm ready to go. Now this is pulling dust from the top through the pegboard and also through the sander down into this port. So I've got 2 points of collection, and it really does work. Okay, so we're at the bandsaw, and you can see the hose coming down the wall. We've got our blast gate. It's connected over to a 4-inch Y, which gives us 2 hoses to connect. The first one I've just got jammed up next to the blade, right up under the table. This one is connected to a 45-degree dust port. Now, I had to cut a hole in this wheel cover and attach that port with a couple of screws and some tape. And then I just attached the hose to that with a hose clamp. So let's take a look and see how well it collects dust. Okay, so what you're looking at is, this is my table saw, this is my outfeed table, and this is the dust port that's coming out of the back of the table saw. And that is a 2.5-inch port, and this here is a hose. If you follow it closely, you can see it there, and you can see it right in here. Underneath the table saw, what I've got is another dust hood, kind of like what's under my joiner, but this one is a 12-inch by 12-inch, and you can also get them 14-inch by 14-inch. And I had to construct a 2x4 and plywood frame to be able to attach the dust hood to, and the 4-inch port is in the middle, and that's what that hose is connected to. And I took insulation and foam and some tape and taped up all the cracks and crevices, and actually you can see some of this pink stuff right here. That's some foam that I had that I'm just shoving. I shoved it in one of the cracks there, and I've got it in various places all around the table saw. The vent that you see here, I did not block that to provide airflow to the table saw motor, and that created basically a cavity that all the dust is collected in, and that port is on the very bottom of that. So this works pretty good. I'll show you a little demo cut from overhead to kind of give you an idea how much dust is accumulated on the table. It's not very much. In my opinion, it does very good, but you can see for yourself. Take a look. Okay, so that concludes the dust collection tour in my shop. Now, if there's something you want to add to what I said or what I did, please do so in the comments below. That's a great place for us to learn from each other, interact with each other. I just really hope that you found this video useful and you can take some things from it to implement in your own shop. Don't forget to check out the video links below, and also the product list if you're interested in any of these things that I mentioned or went over. But thank you for hanging with me. See you next time.